Hello, everyone. Ryan Cunningham from KOVC Radio coming to you today as we get ready to talk with Josh Johnson, the superintendent of the Valley City Public School System. And today we're going to have a conversation, maybe one of the last that we have before the referendum vote that's going to take place coming up on Tuesday next week regarding the new school that is being pursued by the Valley City Public Schools that will try to replace a 106-year-old building with something that's modern, something that's a little compact, and obviously would be a financial impact for some voters in Valley City. And so it's time to kind of find out what all that looks like, what are the pitfalls of the future, all those types of things. And we're joined today by the superintendent of the Valley City School System, Josh Johnson. Josh, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thanks so much, Ryan. It's an honor to jump in with you and have the chance to chat on the school referendum, like you said, a few days before the vote.
Yeah, so let's talk about where we're at with that. You've had a huge educational campaign that's gone on here as of late. Let's talk about maybe some of the things you didn't expect, some of the questions that have been asked of you by the public, and sort of what you've been dealing with and the feedback from people that have come to the open houses and maybe talked with you directly.
Yeah, you bet. One thing when we called for the referendum, the board took action on March 25th. We set out and we wanted to have accessibility to our public to be able to come to ask questions, to be able to get the facts, to be transparent, and to make sure we're timely with the information. And so as we're leading up with a few days here before June 10th, we still, again, are making the effort to make sure that everyone is encouraged out there to vote, resides in the school district, and that they're educated, they have the information. And so we had 4 public meetings. We'll have our last Q&A meeting tomorrow. And so we're excited, again, to be able to conclude. And we feel like we've thoroughly provided that information out to our public, in addition to information shared with the media, I3G, KOVC, News Dakota, social media, and the others. We've had, I would say, okay participation at our public meetings. The first and the fourth meeting were very well attended. We had a lot of interest from community members to take tours of Valley City High School. We had a lot attending our presentations as well. And so good questions that were asked, things such as talk through about the design or the concept that's being proposed. What does that look like? Why the location up next to Jefferson Elementary were some of the questions that were being proposed. People asking whether or not there's enough parking around the proposed new school, making sure that traffic congestion, timing of dismissals, keeping safety in mind were questions. You hit it already, Ryan, and that question was property tax impact. How does that relate relative to the property tax relief that was just passed through the North Dakota legislative session? What's that cost going to be for me as a taxpayer, not only in the next couple of years, but for the length of the bond, if it's successful over 20 years? They want to know about the bigger scope of deferred maintenance, what we've been doing, how we've addressed, what our needs are in the existing buildings, how we're going to make sure going forward, if this is successful, how we're going to address maintenance going forward. I think you and I have chatted in the past about the redesign of the Highlander Activity Center, turning that into a school and a community function. Ryan, one of the biggest questions that we've had over the last 2 months has been, if we take out the 1948 theater, is there a place for the theater drama department program in the new school or as part of the Highlander Activity Center? And so those were some of the great questions that were asked over the last couple of months. And we really appreciate the engagement from the community and just their interest and also acknowledgement of the effort we've been making to try to be transparent and open and really accessible with the information.
There's a lot of information that comes out of that. I mean, there really is. There's a lot of different phases to this. I'm sure the property tax part of this really jumps up into the equation. I'm wondering, as you talk to people after the legislature finished its business, was there a little bit more positivity about the property tax hit, knowing that there is going to be some property tax relief coming back from the legislature?
Undoubtedly there was, and I think there was an education part of it too, though, because let's be honest, right? What happens in legislature sometimes is really difficult to interpret, to understand. And so we leaned in on those that were following the new bills that were passed, and understanding the primary residence credit of the 1600 and how that would impact taxpayers. And so one example that we like to give was, if you own a home in Valley City valued at $200,000, if the new school passes and you apply for the primary residence credit, your taxes next year will actually decrease by $1,000. And so then we equated that, whether your house was less than 200,000 or more than 200,000. And I think that really resonated with people, in knowing that either my taxes are going to stay where they're at or they're going to decrease, and we can have a new school in our community, investing in the future of our students and education in our community. And so I think the timing of that, honestly, Ryan, was probably a significant factor in people's decision on whether or not they want to support this referendum at the poll on June 10th.
So you get some really positive boost from that legislative situation. But I'm wondering, we've got some legislators in District 24, and, during the course of the legislative session, there was some talk about education, about dollars going other directions. They seem to be a little bit more supportive of that type of thing. Have you had some dialogue with people from District 24? I think this is a big, big issue for people that are here, and I'm wondering how engaged our legislators are in regards to what the voters are going to do and what this means for education in Valley City.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, we met with legislators before the session. Of course, we stay in communication, contact with legislators throughout, and try to provide our input. Not only myself, but board members, as well as staff members within our school district as well. And there's definitely a strong appetite, not only in District 24, but I think across the state of North Dakota. And we saw that play out with the school choice bills, the voucher bills, charter bills that were occurring as well. And I think this is all a little bit of a phenomenon now post-COVID that has occurred as well. We've been impacted by it, regardless of the outcome of any legislation, where we're seeing increases in interest in the homeschool, the virtual education. And so for us, and we've tried to share that information through this process, Ryan, as well, that for every student that doesn't attend Valley City Public Schools, that's $11,000 of state dollars that we're not receiving. And so that has a direct fiscal impact for us on our school district and our finances. When we've lost students in enrollment just because we graduate more than what we're bringing into kindergarten, that has an impact. But if that bill would have passed and all of a sudden we would have had public dollars going for private school education, I would have foreseen that we would have had a lot more students choosing to go the private school route, and or maybe choosing the homeschool route as well. So I think it's something that unfortunately is not going to go away. We're going to see that come back in 2 years in the 2027 session. I know that community members were very passionate in their support of public education, and I think we'll see that also play through when this comes to a vote next Tuesday. And Valley City, the community, has had a long tradition of supporting education. I think they've seen education as a cornerstone of our community, along with housing and good quality jobs. And I think it helps to have Valley City State as a teacher college, as an educational, strong educational institution in the state of North Dakota as well. So I think those things are bundled together, directly correlated. And I'm a huge advocate of public education, making sure that, again, we open the doors and are accessible to anybody and everybody. Whereas I think the school choice bills definitely had their limitations.
Josh, you brought up something that's interesting, because we talked about graduating more students than we're bringing in kindergarten, and we know that Valley City's been on a decline when it comes down to public school enrollment, not just because of school choice, but just because of organic growth in the community. So I'm sure you faced throughout the course of this educational process people wondering why a new school if the enrollment is dropping. And I'm wondering how you handled that. How did you go about equating that a new school is a good investment if the enrollment in Valley City is going down and not going up?
Yeah, so we like to say, Ryan, that we're right sizing our school district. So 1972 graduating class had over 170 graduates in it. Ryan, if I could ask you, you graduated in the 90s. How many students did you have graduate? Do you remember?
I believe it was 89 that graduated in my 1994 graduated class.
That might have been a little bit low as well for that class. But what I can tell you is that since the early 70s, College High, St. Kate's High School's closed. They merged with Valley City High School. And so from the 70s and every decade, we've seen a decline in the overall population of our students at Valley City Public Schools. And that correlates relative to a decline of population in the city of Valley City as well as Barnes County as well. And so where we're at right now, not only are we seeing the decline population, that's also, again, reflective of our classification of activities. So we're now considered ourselves as a larger Class B school. So the days of us being able to compare ourselves with a Fargo, a West Fargo, a Grand Forks, not for the purposes of activities, but for the purposes of enrollment and activities and school configuration. We are now comparing ourselves to the Graftons, to a Central Cass, to a Northern Cass, to a Beulah. And so when we look at the numbers that we have, it is not sustainable for us from a financial and an operational standpoint to continue to operate multiple elementary schools, a separate high school, a separate district office, a separate transportation facility, simply due to the overlap of programs and services and expenditures. And so for us, the information that we shared is, yes, our enrollment has changed. We have dropped 150 students plus in the last 7 or 8 years. We believe that number, kindergarten in that 60 to 70 range, is going to stabilize. We've had some smaller classes, but to be able to be fiscally balanced with our budgets, to be operational efficient, this proposal on the table to consolidate our schools, to put 2 elementary schools together, to put a high school connected onto an elementary school, all under one roof, is the most efficient. It'll lead to cost savings for our school district. And that really aligns where our enrollment's at relative to the other schools of like size that likewise also operate under one roof and one building. And so for us, Ryan, as we alluded and spoke to these changes going all the way again back to the 70s, we've experienced those changes, and it's just not sustainable to continue to operate separate schools the way that we are. There's a lot of overlap and an excess cost that we're spending.
But I'm guessing that it wouldn't be easy or even possible without a project like this to consolidate down to one elementary school, trying to combine Washington and Jefferson into one place. I don't think you've got the space at either building. This is probably the only way to do that. Is that right?
Well, part of the consequences of a no vote that we'll be sharing and putting out there, and we've included as part of our presentation as well, is what happens if the vote doesn't pass on June 10th. And so one of the options and the considerations that the school board, and it's a difficult process decision that they're going to need to make as well, is do we consider shutting down Washington Elementary School? The district office will already be one that, regardless of what happens on Tuesday, we'll be looking at consolidating that into an existing school building, just again to take that overhead and to reduce our expenditures. And so Washington Elementary also, Ryan, will be one that we'll have to consider. We currently have 3 grade levels, about 230 students at Washington Elementary School next year. And so one of the options to consider for us is moving 4th graders to Jefferson Elementary and moving 5th and 6th graders to the Valley City High School. And I'll tell you, like you said, it's not going to be easy. It's not an ideal situation to be able to have 5th and 6th graders along with 7th through 12th grade in that building. It wasn't configured. It wasn't built design in that manner to have the elementary and secondary together. There's not an area for recess and a playground for 5th and 6th graders to get outside and to get that fresh air that we know that age of student needs. Yet at the same standpoint, if this doesn't pass on Tuesday, we can't continue to operate in the manner that we are. And so there's going to have to be some difficult decisions if this doesn't pass on Tuesday.
Josh, is the plan that's been put forward by the community that came together to put it together, the school board, yourself, that type of thing, do you believe that it is, for a new school building, the most fiscally responsible, the most efficient, the most affordable option? I'm sure somebody would say, you don't need this, you don't need that, there's extras, there are extras. Do you really feel like you brought it down to this is the most affordable option and the most efficient option that we can offer voters?
It's a really great question, Ryan. And what I can tell you that this process, it isn't something that just came together this year. So we started off looking at our facilities several years back. We looked at new school options in the fall of 2021. At that time, we were putting cost estimates together on different configurations of school, from a 6-12 school to a 4-12 school to a K-12 school. And at that time, we are looking at significantly more money, so 60, 70, all the way up to about $100 million. And the reason why those costs were more than what they are in this proposal is because we had a theater, we had district offices, we had a larger gymnasium in that. And so part of the effort of this committee was to decrease the project size below the debt limit. Our debt limit is $48 million. And so this proposal at $46 million got below that threshold necessary in order to be able to give the community the option to be able to vote on this. What I will tell you is that there was a debate and consideration on whether or not we should include Washington Elementary, so grades 4, 5, and 6, along with the new school. And while that increased the cost to include them, in the long run, when we look at the long-term benefit of that, over time, by consolidating and taking a building offline, not only having the district offline, but having Washington Elementary offline, I think it's the fiscally responsible thing to do, to consolidate that and to be able to streamline, to bring those together. And so while the initial cost of the project is higher than the $40 million, down the road, it will lead to more significant cost savings over the 20-year term. And so to answer your question in a long roundabout way, I do believe that the committee did their due diligence and that they brought forth a recommendation to the board, a unanimous recommendation at that, with this concept of connecting a 3-12 school onto Jefferson Elementary is the fiscally responsible way. It's the most economical, the most practical way, not only for the short term, but the long term as well.
Josh, was there any emotion involved from some of the people that talked with you? There are a lot of people, like myself, that went to Washington School for 6 years, actually 7 years, kindergarten all the way through 6th grade. And then, of course, there's this idea of having a K-12 all in one place together, when we just not too long ago made some changes to allow for some, social types of things, K-3, 4, 6, that kind of thing. Was there any sort of talk about how that might be a drawback?
There was absolutely motion, feelings, memories. We each have had those experiences of our own education. And so for those that had gone through an experience, whether that's Washington Elementary School or, graduates of Valley City High School back from the 60s or 70s, for sure there is. And I think what resounded the most, Ryan, through those conversations that we had is somebody did it for us. They provided the education, the facilities for us, and it's our turn to turn around and provide that for somebody, for our students today and for future generations. And so, as I said earlier, Valley City, our community, has gone through a lot of changes, educational changes over the years. We used to have Ritchie 1, we used to have Ritchie 2, and so there's memories that we still talk to 60, 70-year-olds that went through and are celebrating upcoming VCHS reunions that talked about going through both of those schools, or the old Lincoln Elementary School. And so what we definitely try to do is to be able to honor those those memories, those legacies, those buildings that served thousands of Highlander kids for many, many years in Valley City. And so how do we do that best if this passes on June 10th? There was board members that were on the board in the 70s that said, we considered building a new school back in 1970. Unfortunately, resources prevented that from happening. That's why we put the addition on. I wish we would have built a new school then. And so those were some of the memories. I enjoyed, Ryan, having those conversations with individuals and hearing that feedback and those opinions. You alluded to back in the early 2000s, 2003 is when the Highlander Activity Center was built, and that was added on. There were some other options on the table around that time frame as well of where we should put an athletic facility such as that. And I think one of the neat kind of creative ideas that's come in the last couple of months, and I think you and I have had this conversation as well, is the opportunity to be able to turn the Highlander Activity Center not only from a school activity center, but into a community event center. And I like to say that the largest event that we host each year at the Highlander Activity Center now, or in the recent history, is nothing to do with Valley City High School. It's actually a dance competition, and the economic impact that that event has on our community with the number of children and families that brings in over a weekend in the spring is tremendous. And so if we build or think about redesigning a Highlander Activity Center, the impact that could have on our community, not only from economic weekend businesses, but maybe bigger things as well that would be a draw for people that are looking to maybe relocate or hang their hat, and would it be those kind of things that people are going to be attracted to that's going to draw them to decide where they're going to live.
Josh, you had already talked about what happens if there's a no vote once with one particular issue taking a building offline, kind of no matter what happens. But let's wrap up with this. If it is a no vote coming up on Tuesday, okay, so a building comes offline, but I have to believe that doesn't fix the infrastructure problems that are currently at Valley City High School, no matter what you do. You might be able to try to fix them over time, but it seems to me there's something unique about communities like Valley City. 40 to 45% of the land that's in the city that's non-taxable. You're kind of in a property poor school district just because you don't have a lot of ag land to help support this, that type of thing. Is there a legislative aspect to this that's going to have to come into play for communities like Valley City, to where you're going to have to go back to them and say, we can't keep doing this forever, and we also don't have the tax base to do something new? You're going to have to come up with something else. Is there that thought in your mind if this does not pass?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. You mentioned the maintenance part of it, is that so the district doesn't have the resources without going to a vote of the people to be able to address the maintenance. We've estimated up to $37 million, and so that's not money we can just generate without a vote of the people. And so the other thing that makes this tricky, Ryan, is while property tax reform was great, and it provides the primary residence credit of $1,600, it also put restrictions in the number of times that, the time at which schools can call for a referendum. It has to be in a primary or general election. So that means for us, we would not be able to bring a vote, call for a referendum until June of 2026. As you followed other referendums, schools are able to quickly collect feedback and maybe make some tweaks or modifications to their proposals, and then come back around and have the community vote on that again. And so for us, we're looking at minimally 12 months down the road. And so over that course of that 12 months, I think the board is going to have to really analyze and collect feedback and decide what is the next step. And to your point, does that include a conversation with state, regional leaders, legislative leaders, and for school districts of our size and smaller? We are not alone in this issue of dealing with facility challenges. I can tell you that. Down the road, Highway 1, Oaks Public Schools had a failed referendum last spring, and others in Eastern North Dakota, Western North Dakota are also struggling. And so what I can tell you is that there's going to be strong consideration by our school district to re-engage with our legislators as well as state leaders to really address these needs. I believe, Ryan, there's a significant equity and adequacy issue right now that exists that is also leading people out of rural North Dakota, and I think drawing them to the bigger cities in North Dakota. And I think for anyone that grew up in a small town, whether that be Devils Lake, Valley City, or smaller, I think there's a lot of value, family value in that. And if education and school facilities, modern facilities is an important part of that, unfortunately, I think we're losing people to the bigger communities as a result of the conditions of our school facilities.
All right. Josh, thank you so much for the time here today. And obviously, good luck at the polls on Tuesday. I know you got some compliments regarding some people that listened and that were at some of your public hearings that said, hey, you've been very transparent. You've been very forthcoming with the community. You certainly embarked on an honest opportunity to try to educate people. We'll see how it turns out. But thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Thanks to I3G, KOVC, and News Dakota for all the coverage and this information, helping us to be able to get that information out to the voters.
That was Josh Johnson, the superintendent of the Valley City Public School District today, talking about the upcoming referendum. We thank you for joining us today on this I3G media broadcast, and we'll talk to you again soon.